Jarrod Bowen contract situation is quite an emotive one. There's been numerous stories going around about Bowen, and we did a video ourselves on this channel a few days ago that was responding to news that had been leaked from the club that Bowen would need to sign a deal within the next 9 months, otherwise we may have to sell him. As I say, that was information that came directly from the club. I did a video myself, and I say it's a motive subject. People were saying, oh, you're clickbaiting this, and you know, it was just a story. It wasn't even my story. It was a story, and it's since a story that has been fed to a lot of other people in the West Ham world. I reported it as I saw it at the time, which was Bowen has not signed a new deal. Gets to the end of next season, he's got 1 year left. West Ham may be forced to sell him. There was a price tag of 75 million, which, if you remember, I said the club got no way of enforcing that. You're not, the club aren't the ones in a position of strength. Bowen is the one in the position of strength here. And I also made the point that we had been told, as many people have been told at the time, that it wasn't that much to do with wages. You know, that wages weren't a massive problem. Now, this had been interesting because there've been a few people who've been saying for a little while, as I say, it's a motive subject, and there's people with all manner of opinions on this one. You won't get a more divisive and more separate and a more varied set of opinions than when you're on this type of subject. Doesn't matter if it's Declan Rice or Jarrod Bowen. Some people were saying, oh, typical West Ham, just offering him low ball money again. And I made the point, that's just not what West Ham do. I mean, there are a number of reasons why you can, you know, have a pop at the club, but I don't think that's one of them. I think we pay as much money as we possibly can, bearing in mind we're not whatever Manchester United or whoever else. And you were hearing that back. I don't have any contacts with the players' side, far from it, but as I understand it, they were going to make him the highest paid player in not only at the club, but in the club's history. That's a pretty big deal. So we heard it's not about money. So I said to you at the time, well, what could it possibly be about then if it's not money? Now, I just want to bring this point up because, and I'm responding really to a video that appeared on Claret and Booze, which Nick had done. Now, I've got to hold my hands up here. I'm a little bit behind the curve on the story because I've not watched many videos. Well, actually, I'll tell a lie. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos the last few days, but it's been like Tyson Fury and boxing stuff, basically. It's, you know, as I'm sure some of you know, I'm a big boxing fan and I love that sort of stuff. So, yeah, any spare bit of time I've been doing that sort of thing, really. So I hadn't listened to Nick's video. However, I listened to Nick's video yesterday, and I was also aware that maybe he'd been given a little bit of stick over some of the things that he'd said. And I have to say that everything he said made absolute sense as far as I was concerned on it. What did he say? Well, I'll paraphrase him here. He went on to say that Bowen won't sign a new deal. And he said there were a couple of reasons. The first one was for footballing reasons. I think the phrase Nick said was a more progressive style of football. That Bowen would feel that his skills would be better showcased playing in a more attacking team. That's a paraphrase, but I think that's more or less what Nick was saying there. The other thing that he was saying is that Jarrod Bowen will sign a new deal, but he will only sign it for if he can implement a buyout clause in it. So basically, he'll sign a new deal, but it means... But Lucas Paquetá's got one, 85 million, right? From next season, you can sign Lucas Paquetá for £85 million. Okay. Great. You know, well, not great. Not great, but it's okay. The figure Nick gave was £50 million. I just want to say on both of those things, I think they're both utterly believable and would make absolute sense. Firstly, the football one, but there's no massive surprise on there from a football point of view because I'd heard that anyway. I'd heard a little bit more mischievous version than that, actually, that David Moyes was absolutely disgusted. Sorry, that Jarrod Bowen was disgusted with David Moyes' football. And you know what? I push back on that a little bit because I do think David Moyes has been very, very good for Jarrod Bowen. We've since then heard a little bit more of a mellowing from that side of things. And Bowen himself has been coming out and saying how much he loves the club and all that sort of thing. But I've not been oblivious to it, which is why I said at the time, well, okay, well, show us. If you love the club, show us how much you love the club. Sign a new deal. But it's been clear that this is not getting signed and this is not getting done. So, but I also do believe that Jarrod Bowen would score more goals in a team other than West Ham, but only if he's playing every game. That's a different subject. That's a different subject. Would Jarrod Bowen be better off signing for someone else? I think it's a pretty good fit at West Ham. And I just wanted to make the point, really. I just thought that everything Nick said in his video, I don't think there was anything controversial in it at all. And let's talk about this buyout clause. Well, again, that makes absolute sense. I said 2 days ago, that there was clearly something going on here, that David Moyes, that Jarrod Bowen would not be signing this new deal. And if it's not about money, what's it about? Well, this would make sense. That would stop the deal from getting done, right? And if it is what we hear, and I've got to stress, I think you've got to take some of the word and listen to the words the man said. Here's what Nick said in his video. He said, I don't know how much it is. He said, but I understand it was low. And when I asked, was it 100 million lower, 90 million lower, 80 million lower? So he said, he basically wasn't told the exact figure. So he said, I'm guessing about 50 million. It's a guess. We know it's low. All right? So my point is, he's not coming out and saying it is 50 million. He doesn't know. And we don't know. But it's low. And I don't know how that conversation went, but the fact that the conversation stopped around the £50 million mark probably indicates that it is something like that or lower. Which begs the question, well, should West Ham get involved in doing something like that? I'll get to that in just a bit. But it would explain why the deal is being held up. So if West Ham let's again pluck, that's all we can do is speculate here. Pluck another figure out, and then that is, let's say we're offering 165 grand a week, and that's acceptable. And then it's just a negotiation, right? So I think we're still in a negotiation, but they've been going on for quite a while. And I think the whole reason, the fact that the club decided to go public on it, on the first details of it, was that they've hit a roadblock. They can't go any further, and the negotiations have stalled. There's just no continuation of the dialogue. And that's a problem. And if it is for that buyout clause, then we do have a problem on our hands. What do I think should happen? It's easy for me to say what I think should happen, but let's be fair, if Bowen's not going to sign, he's not going to sign. But I think the club could probably, I guess, show a little bit more leeway. So what's the magic figure? If, bearing in mind, we're in a negotiation, would it be ideal to sell Jarrod Bowen for 60 million? No, it wouldn't. Let's say they're asking, let's say they're asking for 45 or something like that, and that's what Jarrod Bowen's advisors want to put into the contract. Should we be doing it for that? I would think not. It just depends how valuable that player is. But we're not in a strong position because we've allowed him to run his contract down. And I've got to say, we are very bad at this. We do not renegotiate with players until it's very, very late. That's a policy of the club. It's not just players, it's the manager. You will hear at some point this season that we will renegotiate with the manager at the end of the season because that's the club policy. Well, you know what? Sometimes the club policy is not necessarily what's best for the club. So it might be a flawed policy. And I think certainly the moment Jarrod Bowen looked like he was better than the player we signed from Hull, maybe a season and a half later, maybe they should have renegotiated then. We wouldn't have been in this position. So the club aren't blameless in this, and I don't overly blame Jarrod Bowen. I think Jarrod Bowen is, just been a remarkable player. You've only got to look at if you're in any doubt, look at the videos I was releasing last week on Jarrod Bowen. Really impressed. Best winger in the league at the moment. Absolutely. Third highest scorer in the Premier League, and a wonderful, wonderful player. Absolutely wonderful player. Scored the winner in Prague. He will always be in the history of West Ham. But it's an extra bit, isn't it? Does he stay on and become a legend, in that sense? I guess there's some form of legendary status he's going to have anyway for scoring that goal. But you know what I'm saying. West Ham are not in a position of strength on this one. So maybe we do have to sell him in January. And I think that would be... Sorry, not January. In the summer. I don't think we should sell him in January. Let me say that. The next few games are quite pivotal to our season. I think if we get to January and we're in good shape, to get rid of Jarrod Bowen would be a really, really silly move, and obviously particularly bearing in mind that Michail Antonio's injury record, it's been good in the last 2 or 3 years, but it can be a little bit suspect. It was certainly a cause for some concern sometimes. So I think with that in mind, we don't sell him in January. Even if in January someone came in with £50 million, £60 million, and we could only, at the end of the season, we could only get 40 million or something like. Well, you know what? That's guess what? That's what you have to do, right? And I guess if because he's worth that money for the remainder of the season, his goals are worth more than the £10 million drop off in fee. And I guess if you're going to say that, it's a case of, well, if you're going to sell him for 40 million then, you might as well just get him to sign up to a new contract and then sell him. Well, it's not quite as easy as that, because I would suggest that if Jarrod Bowen is insisting on a buyout clause, and it's a low buyout clause, then he doesn't want to stay. And that would feed into everything that's been said, right? That would sort of confirm that. And that would be a massive shame. So I think if he's going to go anyway, all you're really doing him is giving him loads more wages, a big signing on bonus, and he's going to go, basically. So it is actually cheaper to sell him for 40 million. But what I would do is, I think if I was West Ham, and I've not had a ton of time to think this through, West Ham have to do everything they can to sign the player. And I sort of, on this instance, I understand why they've leaked the news out there, because there's been a lot of frustration. Why aren't West Ham offering Jarrod Bowen, big money and good money? Well, I think they're trying to say, well, look, we have. When we want him to sign, but it's the player himself that doesn't want to sign. I talk about his representatives, his agents, or whatever the case may be. So I think it's very, very difficult, I think, for Bowen to come out of this particularly well if he does, unless he signs a deal for... If he signs a deal for a £40 million get-out clause, £50 million get-out clause, something like that, then I don't think it reflects particularly well on Bowen, Whereas I think if it's a little bit higher and we get that money, I think he probably leaves with a certain amount of goodwill. But I think as a West Ham fan, you sort of get fed up with players wanting to leave, don't you? I think if I was to do with the club, I would sign a deal. Would I sign him for a 50 million, which is the figure being quoted here? Would I sign him up on a new deal for £50 million sellout clause? Sellout, Freudian slip there. Buyout clause. I would. But there would be one proviso on this, and that would be, I will do it, and you can sign a deal, and maybe this is where the negotiations go. But that cannot be implemented now. It has to be like Lucas Paquetá. So at least we are guaranteed to get another year out of it. So if Bowen's contract runs out, let's say this, if Bowen's contract runs out the summer after next, so that would be, just get this absolutely right, the summer of 2025? Summer of 2025, what I would be doing is, I'll be saying, okay, we'll put the buyout clause in, but the buyout clause only comes into effect from January 26. I think that way, but Jarrod Bowen gets to leave if he wishes to. West Ham have ring-fenced their asset, but I think most importantly, we guarantee ourselves a really good player for the next couple of years. And I think that's really important that we do that. It is far from ideal, and it is an emotive subject. And you know what? And certain people say, I don't know why you're talking about it. Well, I really do. I said this a couple of days ago. I think it's an interesting subject. I think to ignore this as like West Ham news and a West Ham topic, I mean, we're not going to discuss this. I don't see any value in that. I think it is up for discussion. And look, maybe the club shouldn't have leaked the news. You know what? But it's not just all. It's not all coming from the club. That much is clear. So there you go. Have we got a little bit more to the truth? I think possibly. We understand why the deal's stalling. That is absolutely believable. What it's there. Does Jarrod Bowen, would he rather play some more attractive football? I think he probably would. I think he probably would. But as I maintain, I think David Moyes has been not a great manager for some players. I think if you're a young player coming through, David Moyes is no good at all. I mean, he really isn't. Has David Moyes been good for Cyber Rama? No. Has David Moyes been good for Pablo Fornals? No. I've said on numerous occasions, David Moyes took Pablo Fornals from a creative player and turned him in to a holding winger, a defensive winger. That's what he turned him into. Bad for Pablo Fornals. So it's not like I want to make out that David Moyes makes every player into a good player. But as some players, he suits. David Moyes, up until last season, whatever, a couple of seasons, was really good for Aaron Cresswell. David Moyes was really good for Marco Arnautovic, I thought. David Moyes was really good for Michail Antonio, which I never understood why he was in such a hurry to go. David Moyes loves Michail Antonio, so I think you should appreciate it. But I also think David Moyes has been really good for Jarrod Bowen. I think he's been really good for his career. I think he does think he rates him highly. He may not find that Jarrod Bowen gets that level of love elsewhere. Jarrod Bowen has been points in his West Ham career when he's been in patchy form, and David Moyes keeps picking him. So, I've never fully believed that there was this sort of hatred from Bowen towards Moyes. I'm sure there's not. I'm sure there's a massive mutual respect there. Who knows? But ultimately, it's like I said in the previous video. You know what? If it doesn't work out, I am sort of confident with the way the club are buying players and recruiting players at the moment. If it doesn't work out, and I hope it does, and I hope Jarrod Bowen stays, everything I said in previous videos last week is true. I think he's probably the main man at West Ham. And I think West Ham are going to pay him as the main man. I think he's one of the best players in the league, really do. But if he does go, and has forced his way out, I am sort of confident that West Ham will find another player, because we have done in Kudus. Maybe he goes into that position. We have done in Ward-Prowse, we have done in Alvarez. We seem better at it now. So I just think it's important that West Ham, as a club, do not allow themselves to be held to ransom. And you know what? And then you just leave it there. You do everything you can. If Bowen wants to force himself out of the club and leave the club, then ultimately that's down to him.